Alright, hello all you crazy people out there, my name is Dragonite, and welcome back to... I almost forgot the title. Blond Ray of Sunshine. Anyway, this is Chapter 3, and Toshi just defeated the Cinnabar Island gym leader, and is moving on to wherever is going next. I think it's Pallet Town. Let's get reading! By noon, the duo reached their destination. Activity on the island had picked up. A small gathering of people waited by the dock near the marina entrance. "Excuse me," and Toshi spoke up, grabbing the attention of an elderly gentleman. "Is this the waiting area for the ferry to Pallet Town?" "It sure is," he happily replied. "Thank you. I just want to make sure we're in the right place. We've taken the wrong transportation before." "Glad to help." The man gazed up at Fireball. "Say, that's a very nice-looking Typhlosion you have there." And Toshi smiled proudly at his friend. "This is my best friend, Fireball." The gentleman extended a hand. "It's wonderful to meet you, Fireball." Fireball grinned as he shook the man's hand. The gentleman tipped his bowler hat at the toe. "Well, I hope the two of you have a great time in Pallet Town." "Thanks again," and Toshi replied as the gentleman walked away. Fireball began bouncing up and down in anticipation of food. "So, what's in those sandwiches anyway?" Fireball asked. "I'm not sure," and Toshi playfully replied. "I think it's a surprise." Fireball was shocked. "Surprise sandwiches?" He turned around and looked for the ride. "Where is that ferry?" The shady man following them appeared from the crowd. As he approached, his eyes were locked solely on Antoshi. He noticed the indent of Antoshi's wallet in his back pocket. His eyes lit up, slowly and casually strolling up behind him. He reached down, his fingers just slipping within Antoshi's pocket. Suddenly, a large, careless man hastily bumped into Antoshi, causing him to stumble into the would-be thief. "Sorry," the clumsy person exclaimed before quickly shuffling off. Antoshi chuckled and turned to the thief. "Sorry about that." "Hey, it's no problem," the young man replied with a nervous, boisterous laugh before Antoshi turned his attention back to the marina. He bitterly grumbled at the timing of such a mishap. Oh, there it is!" Fireball exclaimed, hopping up in the air and waving the ferry over. The ferry blew its horn. The young thief again tried to pick Antoshi's pocket when Antoshi reached behind to pull his wallet out. Guess I'll get ready to pay the fare as fast as possible," Antoshi thought aloud, watching Fireball continue jumping up and down in excitement. With an amused smirk. The thief behind them seethed. "Oh, come on," he thought, ready to give up on his endeavor. He bit his thumbnail, looking back at the city with a look on his face as though he'd remembered something important. Heaving a sigh, he decided to stick with it. A kid with a Typhlosion has to have a jackpot of a wallet. He slid his hands into his pockets, trying to keep his cool while waiting for the ferry just like everybody else. People soon began boarding the ferry one by one. Each passenger paid the attending deckhand a small fare to board. Fireball merrily skipped across the gangplank, followed by Antoshi, who paid for them both. Instead of paying, the thief calmly slipped past the deckhand, who was distracted by the woman asking a question. Antoshi and Fireball took a seat right next to each other. Antoshi took his backpack off, setting it beside him. The thief sat out of eyesight, watching them for a moment before he reclined across several seats. An older woman walked by and scoffed at his manners. Antoshi unwrapped one of the sandwiches and Fireball went to take it from him. "Now remember," Antoshi said, keeping the food just out of Fireball's reach for a moment. "We each get one sandwich, okay? Try not to swallow it all in one gulp." Ow. Fireball nodded in excitement and Antoshi handed him his food with a smile. Fireball went to take a big bite of the sandwich but suddenly stopped. "Wait, what if I get seasick again? This ferry is way bigger than Sean's boat, and it's nowhere near as fast. It will be a nice, smooth ride the whole way." "Well, in that case," he trailed off before taking a bite. He proceeded to make an endless array of contented noises as he chewed the food. Antoshi smiled and ate along with him while the ferry set sail on onto Route 21. The ferry ride took a bit longer than the previous seafaring trek did, despite the route being shorter. Antoshi didn't mind, happy to take his time whenever he could and soak up as much of his new surroundings as possible. He and Fireball made their way onto the starboard deck where they leaned against the metal railing to enjoy the view. "It's a really big world out there, huh?" Fireball asked, the two of them gazing at Kanto's terrain in the far distance. "Sure is," Antoshi remarked with a thoughtful smile. "I hope every minute of it has been just as amazing for you as it has been for me." "Of course. Every minute of every day is great with my best buddy around." They grinned and chuckled. "Say, have you thought about what we'll do when this is over? You know, if we don't make it to the championship? Where do we go from there? One step at a time, remember? We haven't even gotten our 8th badge yet." "That's true. Guess I'm just getting impatient now that we're so close to the end." Oh, I definitely am too. I keep worrying that something's about to happen and we won't make it to the tournament on time. We just have to keep our cool and go at our own pace like we always do. But you're way better at keeping cool than me. I'm ready to sprint as fast as I can to that 8th badge. We'll definitely be moving a lot faster now, don't worry. The thief made his way onto the deck with Antoshi and Fireball. He made sure no one was watching him before silently creeping up behind them. He was once again just a fingertip away from the goal of taking the boy's wallet when the duo suddenly decided to turn around. Come on, let's go back inside and sit down so you can relax, Antoshi said. He immediately stopped in place upon seeing the thief leaning over in front of them. He panicked and suddenly fell over with a grunt. Oh jeez, he exclaimed, getting back on his feet with an exaggerated wobble in his legs. Sorry, I haven't gotten my sea legs yet. The duo looked at him in confusion. The ship wasn't swaying at all. Hey, you're the guy I bumped into at the marina, Antoshi remarked. Yeah. Wow, funny running into you again, he replied, laughing nervously. He quickly shuffled off, his legs no longer wobbling. Well, see you around. The duo shrugged at each other and headed back inside. The thief banged a fist against the nearby wall in frustration. What else can go wrong today, he thought, running short on patience. By mid-afternoon, the ferry neared a small marina at the southern edge of Pallet Town. Antoshi and Fireball stood outside on the upper deck of the ship, taking in the sight of the new location with awestruck gazes. The town was quaint and colorful, with cars and pedestrians bustling about. From their vantage point, they were able to see many houses and stores lining the roads. The buildings had roofs of all different colors in the spirit of the Pallet namesake. The ferry docked and its passengers began to file out one by one. The duo headed out of the marina with elated smiles, eager to see as much as they could in the short time they had to spare. The would-be thief followed them a distance behind, still seething from the earlier mishaps. So where to first? Fireball asked while Antoshi pulled out his compendium and briefly looked it over. I think we should make a beeline straight through the center of town. It's the quickest path and it has some of the sights along the way. Fireball shuddered. I hate bees. Antoshi chuckled, storing the compendium away. Well, maybe if you didn't bother every hive you saw, you wouldn't have such a problem with them. But their honey is so delicious. With that thought, Fireball's stomach began to rumble. The duo glanced at his belly, then at each other. Come on, let's find a place to grab some food along the way. We'll have an early dinner. Fireball eagerly nodded in agreement. The pair strolled down the old-fashioned brick-lined sidewalk, a thematic mix of color and white at various points. Everything about the area was warm and welcoming. Many passerby smiled, waving or greeting the duo. Some of them were fascinated with the rare Pokemon like Fireball, especially with how abnormally big he was. Antoshi chatted with them, introducing his friend to the others as well as their Pokemon too. The thief watched from afar, arms folded across his chest. He stewed at how friendly the pair were, shaking his head in frustration as they mingled with so many potential witnesses. Once they crossed the street, they noticed a large conspicuous house nearby that had a queue of people waiting to get in. They curiously wandered over to it. Antoshi's eyes lit up upon realizing what it was. Oh wow, he said, awestruck. This is the Oak Laboratory. It's been here since the founding of the town. I've heard the current professor is something of a celebrity. He noticed a sign on a fence outside the lab. 5,000 Poké-Dollars just to go inside. I guess we'll have to pass on this part of the tour, Fireball. Fine by me. That means we get to eat sooner, Fireball remarked, and the duo continued on their way. A short time later, they happened upon a quaint sidewalk restaurant. Several tables and chairs were housed inside the small wrought iron fence. Please seat yourself, Antoshi read aloud the sign next to the entrance. Don't have to tell me twice, Fireball said, eagerly taking a seat by one of the tables. Good thing these chairs are metal, Antoshi said as he took a backpack off and sat across from his friend. We don't need you breaking yet another one. They each picked up a menu that had already been laid out before them. No one else was seated at the other tables, allowing them to freely talk. I like places like this, Fireball said, but I really prefer the all-you-can-eat buffets. Antoshi shook his head and quietly replied, I'm never taking you to one of those again after we got kicked out the last time. I couldn't help it. They had waffles. Tons and tons of waffles. That's my favorite food. Yeah, and you ate them all. It's a good thing you were able to walk after that, or they would have had to forklift you out. The two continued looking over the menu when suddenly Fireball began to hyperventilate. Antoshi looked over at him with concern. Fireball stared back with wide eyes, slowly turning the menu around and pointing it to a large picture of waffles with syrup. Antoshi sighed and smiled. A moment later, a perky young waitress came over to greet them. Hello there, she said, grabbing their attention. Welcome to the Sweet Sunkern. My name is Gemma. What can I get for you? What can I get for you? Yeah, that's what it says. I will have the chicken salad, and Toshi replied with a smile as he set his menu down. Very nice, and for your handsome Typhlosion, she chuckled, watching Fireball restlessly bounce up and down in his chair. He seemed very excited to order, and Toshi smiled, sitting back comfortably. I know exactly why. He'll have the waffles. Fireball eagerly nodded up to the waitress. With syrup. Fireball nodded with further enthusiasm, and lots of blueberries on top. Absolutely. You know, that's quite impressive that you can understand your Pokemon so well. Almost like I can hear him talk, and Toshi joked. The two of them shared a laugh. I'll be right back with your food, she said before heading back inside. Page, turn, thank you. Fireball sighed in content, settling down just before picking up his fork and knife. It took Antoshi a very long time to teach him how to eat with utensils. Just getting him to hold them properly took weeks of practice. It's really nice here, Fireball remarked. Antoshi nodded. Yeah, it's much calmer and more peaceful than we're used to. Kind of like Lavender Town, except that was more of an eerie peaceful. I guess that's just how towns are compared to the city. I like it. Fireball wrapped his fork and knife on the table. Now where's my waffles? And Toshi sighed. Next thing I have to teach you is some restraint. Never going to happen, Fireball replied with a cheeky grin. And Toshi and Fireball took their time enjoying their meal. That's unusual. The thief watched them from across the street, grumbling as he bit into a hamburger he bought at a nearby food stand. After they finished eating, the duo were back on their way through the welcoming streets to Pallet, stalked by their would-be thief. The pair came across a picturesque town square with several large oak trees grew. At the center was a large stone statue atop a pedestal in the middle of a man-made pond. And Toshi gasped loudly in awe. A huge grin crept across his face, nearly eagerly jogging over to see it closer. I've waited so long to see the statue, he remarked, his gaze unblinking. Wow, it's really him. That's the guy you've mentioned a few times, isn't it? Fireball curiously asked, standing next to his friend. The guy that became champion a long time ago? Yep, the legendary trainer from Pallet Town. I'd have loved to be able to battle that Pikachu of his, Fireball remarked with a confident smirk. Some of the Pokemon I've met talk about that Pikachu too. It's not all about the trainers, you know. I know good and well that with you as my best friend. I know that's good and well with you as my best friend, he replied, the two of them grinning at each other before looking back at the statue. The statue was built over 70 years ago to commemorate them. I'm really glad I got to see it. Fireball noticed a plaque on a small pedestal near Antoshi's feet. Hey, what's that say in front of you? I'm bad with reading lots of words at once. Let's see, it says, dedicated to all trainers and their beloved Pokemon aspiring to be the very best. We, the people of Pallet Town, erect this statue in honor of the sacrifices he and his Pokemon will just have made, and all the people whose lives they touched. May it serve as a keystone to the dream and those who endeavor. To those who dream and those who endeavor. He was inspired and moved by the poignant words that were meaningful to himself and to Fireball. He looked up at the statue again with a smile. It sure will. The pair proudly gazed at the statue a little longer. With a content sigh, Antoshi nudged his friend. Let's get a move on, he said. He brought out his compendium again and they strolled away. According to the map, there's a Pokemon Center at the northern edge of town. We'll stop by just to give Mom and Dad a call. Sounds like a plan, Fireball said. Let me take a pause to take a drink. Alright. Antoshi and Fireball entered the Pokemon Center, finding it not terribly busy. Nurse Joy tended to a couple of trainers and their lethargic Raticate at the front desk. The duo headed over to the video phones to make their call home. Antoshi's doting mother appeared on the screen, answering the phone quicker than usual. Antoshi! His mother exclaimed with a surprised look on her face. You've never called 2 days in a row. Is everything okay? Antoshi's father casually walked by in the background, looking just as surprised as she was before he headed over to the phone. Yeah, everything's great, he happily replied. We're actually in the Pallet Town Pokemon Center now. Fireball waved to them from behind Antoshi. We're not going to be staying here for much longer, though. We'll be on the road to Viridian City by tonight. You got there so quickly, his father remarked. And you're leaving already, too. I hope you're not moving around too fast now. Antoshi nodded. Unfortunately, we are, Dad, but we have to. I hate to leave so soon, but we don't have a lot of time before the tournament sign-ups close. That's less than 2 weeks. We also don't know how tough the gym in Viridian is going to be, so we might not have any time to spare. I always trust your judgment, Antoshi, his mother warmly said. Sometimes I think you're wise beyond your years. Anyway, I'll have another shipment of clothes and some money ready for you by the time you get to Viridian City, okay? Thanks, Mom, Antoshi replied, grinning. And make sure you send back all your clothes this time. The red shirt with the white stripe down the middle is really comfy, though, Antoshi whined, playfully smirking. Pages! God. All your clothes, capiche? She sternly added. I got it, Mom. Oh, we were able to see a few sights in Palette. It's really nice here. That's wonderful, Antoshi. I'm always happy when you're happy, honey. I know someday that you'll look back fondly on all these memories you're making. Talk to us again when you get to Viridian City. I will. Love you guys. We love you, Antoshi, they both said before the call disconnected. Antoshi smiled as he got up from the chair. Off to Route 1 we go, he said, looking at Fireball, who nodded in agreement. This is the fastest we've ever moved through our entire journey. Think you'll be full enough for the rest of the night. Think you'll be full enough for the rest of the night. We still have those snacks just in case, right? Yes, we still have snacks, Antoshi replied with a chuckle. Fireball sighed and wiped his brow in relief. As they departed for the town's northern limits, the luckless thief again kept an eye on them from nearby. Leaning against the lamppost, he spoke quietly to an unknown party on his cell phone. He became progressively more cross with the person on the other end of the call. In a huff, he hung up and put his phone back in his back pocket. He angrily straightened his jacket before stuffing his hands in his pockets and following the duo once again. Antoshi and Fireball reached the gate separating Pallet Town from Route 1. It was as busy as any crosswalk connecting people from one side of the street to the next. The gate housed a trainer checkpoint, allowing him to scan his trainer card with the authorities working inside. Like the Pokemon Centers, it also updated his last known location. Thank you, the boy exclaimed as he was given back his trainer card from the gate's guard. He slipped his card back in his wallet. Hey, no problem, youngster, the gatekeeper responded. You two stay safe now, he added before checking the next trainer's card. Antoshi grinned happily. We will. The two were on their way into a brand new route. They entered Route 1 with the same level of intrigue and curiosity that they had every time they set foot in a new location. The large, spacious route was nothing more than a long, large forest clearing with patches of large grass at the path's edge which led into the forest. Like any route, there were a mix of trainers... Pages, spend normally, please. Trainers, Pokemon, and pedestrians traveling through. The route was lined with the occasional park bench, litter bins, and a set of streetlights. On one side beyond the trees, cars drove to and fro from a nearby road connecting Viridian, Pallet, and other nearby small towns. Antoshi casually gathered up various sticks and twigs he spotted on the ground along the way, slipping them into his backpack's empty side pocket. The duo continued walking until nightfall. They found a clearing outside the beaten path to set up camp. Antoshi used the tinder he collected, along with a casual puff of flame from Fireball, to bring a small campfire to life. Antoshi rolled out his sleeping bag, while Fireball settled in on the ground next to him. Having undressed into his usual sleeping attire, Antoshi neatly folded his clothes and placed them in his backpack, which was set down between himself and Fireball. He climbed into his sleeping bag afterward. Another comfy patch of grass to sleep on, Fireball remarked in content, resting his hands behind his head. Surrounded by countless acres of untouched forest, they happily stared up at the countless stars in the sky. The air was always so crisp and fresh in the forest, especially at night. The leaves rustled softly amid the quiet crackle of the fire and chirping crickets. Antoshi, Fireball said, breaking the silence, why do you think you can talk to Pokemon? This again, Antoshi wondered, looking over at his friend, singular. How many times are we going to have this conversation? I just know we'll figure this out. Have you thought of anything new? Well, there's... Antoshi's eyes shifted nervously away. Never mind. Fireball looked at his friend with suspicion. Antoshi, I'm your best friend. I know when you're not telling me something. Who else are you going to tell your secrets to, anyway? Who else am I going to tell? Okay, fine, Antoshi sighed heavily, thinking for a moment. I've noticed lately that I feel... well, that I'm way different from other people. I could have told you that. Okay, aside from just talking to Pokemon, Antoshi trailed off, sitting up in his sleeping bag. Look. Here, look at what I found out I can do. Fireball also sat up, curiously watching as Antoshi kept his hands with his palms facing upwards. Antoshi stared at his open hands and concentrated intensely, quietly grunting with effort. His brown irises came alight with a reddish hue to them. Fireball watched in astonishment as bright particles of light began to form over his hands and pulled together into a large ball. The amorphous orb of light shimmered with a brilliant hue of red. Whoa, Fireball remarked. What is it? I'm not sure, but it takes a lot of concentration for me to... The ball of light abruptly burst into particles and faded away. Hold it. And Toshi sighed, letting his hands fall away. When I don't concentrate, it pops like a balloon. It kind of makes me a little tired afterward, too. I don't know why I can do it. That's some crazy puberty you're going through, Fireball joked. And Toshi cut his eyes at him. I'm kidding, I'm kidding! He rested a hand on his chin as he thought for a moment. Well, I've never seen anything like that before. No person we've ever met did it either. Wait a minute. Since when did you have the time to find out you can do this when we're together all the time? Remember that time I caught you after you nearly fell down the cliff on Route 14? Yeah, you caught me by the legs and pulled me up. I'm still amazed by how strong you were. Well, when I was holding on to you, I noticed my hands and my arms were glowing red. I thought they were on fire, but I wasn't in any pain. I could barely hold on to you, but once my arms glowed, pulling you back was a breeze. After you were safe, the red glow just faded away. I spent a whole bunch of nights awake after that, trying to get it to happen again, and eventually, I was able to form that glowing ball I just showed you. And Toshi despondently looked away. What's wrong? Fireball asked in concern. I don't want to tell you this because, well, honestly, I'm a little worried about it. Why are you worried? This is cool. I know it sounds weird, but I can't shake the feeling that it's some kind of sign. There might be more to this. There might be way more to this than just cool lights in my hands. I can't tell if it's a good feeling or a bad feeling that I'm getting. It just makes me odd inside, like my whole body is shaking with a crazy energy I can barely contain. Fireball blinked in confusion. Are you sure this isn't puberty? Fireball! Antoshi angrily shouted. Sorry, I just don't really know anything more than you do. Maybe we should ask someone else. Like who? Fireball stared blankly for a moment. Good question. Well, maybe I'll just understand it better in time, I guess. Maybe. For now, we have something cool to look at when we're bored. And Toshi couldn't help but smile. I guess there's always that. He laid back down in his sleeping bag and sighed. Good night, Fireball. Good night, Antoshi. Fireball followed his friend's lead, curling up comfortably on the ground. They shut their tired eyes, resting up for another busy day. That night, Antoshi had another dream. He found himself sitting up in the same bed he had dreamt about the previous night. He looked at his hand, not his own, finding that he was trembling uncontrollably. He again had feelings of sorrow, but now those feelings were exacerbated and accompanied by fear and panic. He heard a voice speaking to him, almost like a soft whisper, but he couldn't discern the words. The voice began laughing, a gravelly, cruel laugh. He clasped his forehead and shouted in agony. Get out! He exclaimed before getting up from his bed and staring at the bedroom window. Get out of my head! He rushed forward, leaping through the window and plummeting towards the ground while the strange voice continued its horrible laughter. The moment his body impacted the ground, Antoshi jolted awake with a terrified shout. All was quiet in the middle of the night. Fireball was sound asleep, their campfire had smoldered. Antoshi was in a cold sweat, his breathing ragged. His heart raced, feeling residual fear and panic from his dream. What is going on? He thought, running a shaking hand through his hair. What are these dreams I keep having? Why do they feel way too real? Antoshi reached into his backpack, pulling out his canteen of water to drink from. He sighed heavily, putting the cap back on and storing it away. He laid back down, his trembling slowly subsiding as he gazed up at the starry night sky. He brought a hand up to his face, focusing for a moment, summoning the same bright red energy as he had brought before, the same bright red energy as before into his palm. He clenched his fist a moment later, extinguishing the light and letting his hand fall away. The strange light and the dreams have to be connected. But how? He stayed awake for a short while before succumbing to the exhaustion and fell back to sleep. Reading. A short time later, the relentless thief emerged from the trees. He smiled fiendishly. There was no better opportunity to steal the boy's wallet than while the pair were asleep. He slowly tiptoed towards the campsite. Once he was close enough, he reached down and grabbed hold of Antoshi's backpack. Fireball turned over and roughly smacked the backpack out of his hand. The thief jumped, stifling a surprised shout. He thought he'd been made, but Fireball was still asleep. The Typhlosion smacked his lips and muttered to himself. The thief sighed in relief before trying again. Come on, he whispered, trying to slowly and gently pry it away from Fireball's paw. However, Fireball pulled the backpack towards him. He gently wrestled it away in his sleep, shuffling its contents around before sighing happily and hugging it tight. The thief looked on in horrified disbelief, resisting the urge to scream at the top of his lungs in rage. Seething, he stomped away back into the woods for the rest of the night. The following morning, the duo awoke almost in sync. They both sat up and stretched their arms high, and Toshi's backpack rolled off onto Fireball's chest. The two looked at it in confusion, then at each other. You hugged my backpack during the night again, huh? And Toshi asked quietly with a smirk. Fireball handed the pack to him. I can't help it. Sometimes I need to hold something while I sleep. Well, I hope you don't get hair all over it this time, Antoshi joked, unzipping the backpack and pulling out a new pair of clothes. He took out a wrapped trail bar for himself and tossed a small bag full of Pokemon food to Fireball. Here you go, buddy. Let's make sure we're fueled up before we head out. Fireball didn't even bother responding. He was too busy already munching through the food with a pleased expression on his face. Wearing a black polo shirt and tan cargo shorts, Antoshi cinched his backpack over his shoulders. Don't you ever get tired of wearing those shirts with collars? Fireball asked curiously. Antoshi idly brushed some of Fireball's fur off the backpack straps. I suppose so. I don't feel like telling Mom since she really likes how they look on me. They look good, right? Yeah! They make you look like a golf player. Antoshi rolled his eyes, scoffing and grinning. Very funny, he sarcastically replied, much to Fireball's amusement. Come on, you. Let's see about getting that 8th badge before the tournament starts. Challenge accepted, Fireball replied, the two setting off towards Viridian City. The thief watched from behind a tree, looking frazzled and practically foaming at the mouth with ire. Following one kid in his Typhlosion for an entire day to steal a wallet was not something he ever imagined, but he remained resilient. By the start of the afternoon, Antoshi and Fireball neared the southern edge of Route 1. They started seeing large buildings towering over the trees, getting taller and closer with each passing minute. Not long after, the gate separating Route 1 from Viridian City came into view in the distance, while the bustle of passers-by started to increase. They grinned at each other, knowing they were just a short jog away from entering another new city. A group of young kids crowded around the duo. They oohed and awed at the sight of Fireball towering over them. Wow, cool, a Typhlosion, one of them exclaimed as they all began to pet him. Fireball grinned. I hope they want to give me snacks, he thought. Antoshi smiled as he watched his friends soak up the attention, responding to the kids as they asked him a barrage of questions. The thief's eyes lit up, seeing another perfect opportunity to make a move on the pair while the pair were distracted. He casually crept up behind Antoshi while a Tauros suddenly came rushing towards him. He screamed and jumped out of the way of the barreling bull, followed by a Pokemon breeder chasing after it. Tauros, get back here, the breeder shouted. Wow, cool, a Tauros, the same youngsters exclaimed, prompting the crowd of kids to head off. They accompanied the breeder chasing after the Tauros, laughing and shouting. Bye-bye, one of the kids shouted, waving to Antoshi and Fireball. Bye, Antoshi replied, waving back, and the two were merrily on their way again. You're so popular, Antoshi joked. The thief stood at the edge of the beaten path, seeing red. He let out a frustrated scream, fed up with the convenient blockades keeping him from the simple task of stealing the boy's wallet. Screw this! The thief angrily shouted. He broke out into a sprint towards the duo. They heard him coming and turned around just in time to see him snatch Antoshi's wallet out of his back pocket and bolt off. See ya, kid! He shouted. The nearby people on the route watched the scene unfold. Hey! Antoshi exclaimed in shock. He and Fireball immediately gave chase. You stole my wallet! He called out. Our badges! Fireball shouted. He was about to use a rollout attack to stop him, but the thief ran into a crowd of people. In doing so, he shoved a lady with long blue hair to the ground. Ow! She cried out. The duo stepped to check on her, Antoshi kneeling down to the woman. Are you okay? He asked in concern. Yeah, I think so, she replied with a hand on her head. As Antoshi helped her to her feet, Fireball angrily growled before charging into the crowd of people. Antoshi gasped. The thought of Fireball running off out of control and into a crowd of frightened people worried him. Fireball, wait! He cried out. I'm not letting him get away, Antoshi, Fireball shouted back. Don't worry. I'm sorry, I gotta go, Antoshi told the woman who was still reeling, quickly rushing off to follow his friend. Fireball! The thief blew through the people traveling through the gatehouse, garnering a lot of angry yells and complaints as he shoved them aside. He continued running after making it into the Viridian City limits. He found a nearby alleyway to duck into and pulled out his phone. With his ear to the receiver, he waited for the other party to pick up. "It's Matt," he said. "Track my phone. I need to be picked up right now." The receiver hummed with the sound of a loud, complaining voice. "Just get your ass over here. I'm being chased by some kid's Typhlosion." He peered his head out of the alleyway just long enough to see Fireball go spot him through the crowd. "Hey!" Fireball shouted, running towards him on all fours. "Oh, crap," Matt muttered to himself as he ran further down the alley. Back in the gatehouse, Santoshi was also busy running through the crowd, apologizing to the people he had bumped into. "Hey kid, wait!" The guard called out to him from behind the desk. "Come scan your training card if you're a trainer." "Sorry, I'm in a hurry," Santoshi exclaimed. Whilst not scanning one's training card was perfectly fine, the guard found 2 people and a Typhlosion barreling through the gate to be somewhat suspicious. As a result, he picked up the phone and informed the Viridian City Police. Antoshi didn't expect his first steps within Viridian City would be ones of trepidation. He still hadn't seen Fireball since he ran off, and it was starting to scare him. He panted nervously, looking in all directions through the dense crowds of people as best he could. Cars sped by as he looked across the streets, calling out his name along the way, but getting no response. He had no idea where to look, lost and alone in a large, busy, unfamiliar city. The sights and sounds overwhelmed him and made him dizzy. His heart sank at the thought of being separated from his best friend. "Fireball!" he shouted as loudly as he could, becoming visibly panicked. "Where are you?" And that's it for Chapter 3. I hope you all enjoyed that. In the next part, we'll find out what happens. My name is Dragonite, and I will see you all later.